And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicinda. I am Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love, and amazing designers find great players who love their games. We do that in a lot of different ways, but my favorite way is actually to sit down with the designer, or in tonight's case, the designers and producers of RPGs, and talk to them about the work that they're doing, the projects that they have going on. Today, we're going to kind of take a look at things in a little bit of a different manner. We've got a whole crew of folks. And so rather than diving into each one of their backgrounds, we're really going to look at the project they're all working on right now, which is Home, which is a haunted house RPG that has some amazing map building components. So if you're a fan of games like The Quiet Year, other things where you kind of explore the space as you play, you should go check out Home. The best way to do that is to go to TTRPG.link/HomeRPG. It'll take you right over to the Kickstarter page where things are live right now. But I'm very excited to have the team here with us. Thanks everybody for joining me tonight. Let's go around and just meet everybody. I'd love to hear who you are, and then what is the most haunted spot in your house currently, or if you want to talk about the house you grew up in or another house you've lived in, you can talk about that also. Also, no one will know if you're making it up. We're going to start with Matt. Matt, why don't you tell people who you are, what your role is on the project, and the spookiest part of the house you live in.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Matthew Orr. I'm a co-owner of Wet Ink Games. We're publishing this endeavor here, Home. And I think that's all the things you asked for. You didn't ask for too much. And then so the scariest part of my house is it's probably the kitchen, because we used to have a rabbit, and I think sometimes the rabbit's still around. So we have new rabbits now, but like sometimes they're in one room and you know where they are, and then you hear a rabbit in another room and you're like, well, that's the old rabbit still around. So probably the kitchen. All
right. Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Can't wait for more rabbit related hauntings as we go. We'll just move up and around the screen. So Doug, why don't you go next? Tell people who you are, a little bit about your role on the project, and what's the spookiest room in your house?
Yeah. So my name is Doug Lewandowski. I am the co-designer of Home, and the house I live in right now is 0% haunted. That's part of why we bought it. But the house I grew up in is bonkers haunted. I am having trouble picking a room, but I guess it would probably be the crawl spaces under the house that you can access from the basement, but there's wire mesh over them. So you can see about a foot in, and then there's a dirt floor. And yeah, it's horrifying.
I got to know, how are you 100% sure that the house you're in right now isn't haunted?
We paid extra for it.
Okay.
And, invisible hand of the market. Obviously, if people were going around pretending that houses weren't haunted and then telling you, and charging you extra, that would just be, no one would do that. Who would do that?
Who would do that? Why would marketing or capitalism allow that to happen? Awesome. Matthias, how about you tell us who you are, about your role on the project, and the spookiest room in the house you currently live, or a previous iteration of houses you've lived in?
So my name is Matthias Benici. I'm the graphic designer for Home. My apartment isn't haunted, but my grandmother's house was. We used to think that my grandfather still lived in his workshop in the basement, and we used to dare each other to go all the way down the dark hallway and go and sit in there, and no one ever would.
Love it. And then Julian, how about you? Who are you? What's your role on the project, and what's your spookiest room?
Yeah, so I'm Yunsu Julian Kim. Most people call me Julian. I am one of the co-designers of Home along with Doug. And yeah, I mean, I mostly work in TTRPGs and stuff, but I have a lot of contenders for this question.
You know what? If you want a couple shots at it, we'll take a couple stories. You can have a few.
So where I live now is totally like chill and fine, but like weirdly, the first thing is that I had a room where there was a door to the attic when I was like a teenager and like preteen, and there was a clown head in that attic, which I didn't love. And animals would also like break in there and like run across the floor and stuff, and I would hear scampering and like footsteps and stuff. So I'm not convinced. I have weird dreams about that house still, but I'm not convinced that one was the most haunted. The most haunted was one on Capitol Hill in DC. Built around 1909, and all the windows in my room would sometimes open like in the night, or while I wasn't in there or something, or while I was like in the bathroom for a second, like the windows would just and there were a lot of them. There was like 8 of them would just be open. And a door got slammed in my cousin's face once because he lived there with us for a while. And there were like a lot of people, all our family members had like various stories, and everyone was like, told everybody else not to tell me because I was going to get freaked out. And you're like, you think I don't know when all my windows are opening constantly?
God, I love it. I love it. I can't imagine that Capitol Hill has ever had anything bad go down that would cause,
yeah, no, it's fine.
The spirits of the dead to be not restful. Awesome. I'm very excited to dive into it. If you're watching right now in the chat, I would love to hear haunted locations. If you're watching later in the chat, you can think of all of us as ghosts of the past, even though we're still probably alive. Tell us your most haunted place. Would love to know. We do still like people to get a sense of like what kind of people's role-playing lineages, how they got into RPG. So before we dive into Home specifically, I'd love to hear from each of you. Maybe we'll just kind of go in reverse order. So Julian, back around this time. How did you kind of get started playing and then designing RPGs?
Oh man, I mean, it started like for many people with D&D when I was a young child, and I was also one of those kids who didn't really have a whole lot of friends to play RPGs with, so I ended up spending a lot of time reading rule books and imagining what it would be like to play Dungeons and Dragons. And then I always kind of thought I was going to go into video games, but in grad school or in undergrad, I minored in game design it was very like focused on board games and kind of like, pen and paper kind of stuff, things with physical components. And after grad school, I just kind of hit the ground running with LARP, and which then became tabletop RPGs. So I actually kind of hit LARP first and then went into tabletop, which I know it's a reverse for a lot of people.
No, I love it. And a lot of my favorite designers, that was kind of LARP was their entry point, whether that was through camp, through game design groups, through whatever. So I always love the elements that brings in, because it brings in a different type of tactility and thoughtfulness to the way the game's played. So that's really cool to hear. Matthias, how about you?
Like Julian, I started with Dungeons and Dragons, and then I stuff in other games in there, cyberpunk, vampire, werewolf. But with graphic design, I got into it by accident. I had a friend who was designing their own game and posted something on Facebook, and I said, "Oh my God, that's designed horribly," and ended up taking over his entire game until I ended up publishing it. So, and I've been working in the industry for the past 10 years on multiple projects. I've been with Doug for like 20 projects so far.
Yeah, he's stuck with me now.
My third with Wedding Games.
I love it. I'll always love to see people go, hey, yeah, I love, this is a great idea. Let's make it not look horrible. That's a lot of my partnerships historically started that way also too. So it's always great. Doug, I mentioned tons of projects, but tell us a little bit about how you got started playing and what transitioned you in.
Yeah. So D&D in middle school for sure, with the guys in my Boy Scout troop, like the most predictable suburban guy transition into D&D. But also got super into the Men in Black role-playing game, which came out right around the first movie for a little while. So, yeah. And then kind of stopped playing for a while, picked it up again about 10 or so years ago, maybe 12. with 5th edition, and have been back into playing ever since. And then, got that itch scratched, and then tried Fiasco and, all kinds of weirder, smaller stuff, and just had a great time with it. And then about 6 years ago now, I asked John Gilmore if he wanted to do a kids, like a Stranger Things board game. And he said he was already doing one, but he would be interested in doing an RPG. And I said, well, I've only designed kind of one of those before, so sure, let's give it a shot. And then that was Kids on Bikes.
Yeah, awesome. Right now in the middle of second edition funding too, right? So a lot of fun stuff going on right now. But love a lot of the folks who contribute to the Kids on Bikes universe and project. Also are huge friends of ours here at Plus One. So always excited to get to touch base with somebody like you who's done just some tremendous work in this space. Also, Matt, tell people a little bit about how you got involved with RPGs and then into design.
Yeah. I've told before that on different shows and stuff the first game that I played was one that I developed myself and played with my friends, but I've recently realized that is incorrect. And actually there was an earlier attempt to play a game, which was TSR's Marvel Superheroes game from the mid 80s, which my dad and I tried to play together and failed because we had no, he'd read comics when he was a kid, but I didn't read comics. I don't even know why. I may have gotten it as a gift. I don't know how I got this game. I don't remember, but I remember that we played it and we were like, well, I guess that was some stuff. Okay. And then it was fallow for a long time. I didn't really pick up role-playing games until middle school. And that's when I did 8 years later or so. That's when I did I was like, hey friends, I got this grid paper and I'm going to draw some mountains over here and some cities over here. And I don't know, when you go to this square, you roll, 1d4 wolves. How do you deal with it? And they're like, we fight them. Great. You beat them. Now we go to the northmost square. And it wasn't until I met Brandon and he had an actual proper library of role-playing game books, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the one that we started with, and that's when we knew each other, but when I found out he had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game is when we became friends. And so he's my business partner now after, we've been playing role-playing games since middle school, and we have played a little bit of D&D in there, but we both published stuff with Palladium Books for a while, and that's how we met a lot of the artists that we've worked with before. And so we did enough of those projects that we were like, I think we can do this on our own. Their idea for our first game, they were like, Palladium would never publish this. No one will publish this. Let's publish it ourselves. And so we moved from writing for other people to doing our own stuff. And we've had, I would say some reasonable success publishing stuff. And we've kind of moved from writing our own stuff like we did for our first few projects to doing what we're doing this time, which is somebody comes to us with a design that's 95% done and says hey, we're ready for this to be published. Do you want to be the people to make all those calls? And we're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so I think it was not quite a year ago that we had the first conversation with Doug, and he's like, I got this thing coming up. You guys interested? And we're like, yes, anything you do is golden. Let us
I love it.
Let us talk more. Let us talk more. So we've been talking, and now it's here. So
That's here.
It's been
Awesome.
great.
I'm excited to kind of dive into a little bit about the game and this kind of golden idea that Doug had that y'all are in the middle of working on. Huge fans of the work that Wedding does. Always love it when we get a chance to work with y'all. You put out some of our favorite OSR supplements with Charlie Ferguson Avery. Love Never Going Home. But we're not never going home. We're actually literally going to HomeRPG. Yeah, and I'm sure everybody notices it. It's not the first time you've heard the joke, and I
know, and
only the second for me.
It's only the second for you.
We had an interview, and he pointed it out, and I had never thought of that before.
When I heard that interview with it was on Rook and Rasp, but I was like, but Doug is the one who wrote an adventure for Big Never Going Home book, in which it turns out that it was all a dream, is basically one of the conclusions that you can come to. And so I'm like, Doug, you broke the game. It's called Never Going Home, but in your adventure, it turns out it was all a dream. And so that's like a further joke for me, is that like this home never going home, but Doug is the one who broke it before. So here we are. This time it's home.
Doug's long-term plan just to make everybody be home in a spooky haunted house. So Doug, Julian, y'all as the designers, could one of y'all give me the elevator pitch about what is home? Like if people are taking a look at the project, haven't heard about it, just hearing about it for the first time now, tell us kind of what they can expect from this game.
Doug, you want to grab this one?
Yeah. You're better at elevator pitches.
Oh, I mean, okay, cool. Let's see. Yeah, elevator pitch. Well, the very, very basic is a haunted house game where you're also drawing the map out. And the focus thematically is really on exploration and discovery, but not just in that you are going through this house, figuring out what's here and what's wrong with the place, but also kind of delving into some self-discovery about your characters and kind of like your sordid past, your relationships and secrets that you hold with one another. And as the house kind of acts up in supernatural ways, people become a little bit more on edge and relationships become a little bit more fraught, and people are butting heads and trying to survive the night in multiple senses.
Excellent. I like I said, I love map drawing games. It's really funny. Like when we started our channel, I was like, I'm not really into horror games, and now I'm like, I love every time we get to play a horror game. It's always the best. It's one of my favorite things. So I'm very excited to dive in a little bit more with y'all on kind of how the game is played, some of the other pieces that kind of went into it. What was kind of some of the initial inspiration for this game specifically? Like what's something that made y'all think, hey, this is a space we want to design in, and what was that kind of kernel that started the conversation?
For me, the start was thinking about. I have a joke with my friend Ben, who's like, anytime I play a D&D game, he's GMing it or I'm GMing it for him, and he told me, "You always play the same character, yourself." And I, fought that for a little bit, but he's right. And I started thinking about a game where you are as close to yourself as possible, and what you could play around with in there. And started thinking about a game where you're exploring a house with others, and as you go through, you discover that pieces of your childhood home are coming in there. And pretty quickly, Julian and I had been working together on a podcast, and I knew I wanted to design with them. And so said, hey, thinking about this. They said, cool. And then we ran play tests where every single time someone said, as soon as we got to that, and you'll be playing yourself, and just as a heads up, parts of your childhood home will show up. Every single test, somebody said, oh, I'm out then. That was Matthias one time. And so then it sort of started to morph into other things. And Julian had the really incredible idea to have different setups for different things to put into the deck that would shift the genre of house. So Jules, do you want to?
Yeah, so we have something we're calling Haunting Tales, and they're basically kind of these themed decks that you end up mixing in with the rest of the game deck to create kind of the vibe and the whole atmosphere and the theme of whatever haunted house story you're going to be collaboratively telling together. So for instance, we have one called Echoes of Childhood, which kind of takes from that initial idea that we had there. And we have other ones that, for instance, play with the idea of this house does not obey the laws of time as we know them. It's a non-linear time house. You're going to be seeing things from the past and the future that you shouldn't be seeing, and trying to make sense of them, or completely failing to make sense of them. And that's also what we have our Kickstarter stretch goal writers doing. They're all coming up with theme decks and also additional character archetypes that you can play. And we're really, really excited for that, to see what people are coming up with. But yeah, it's not only just kind of for the replayability sake, but just that there's so many different haunted house stories out there, and people all have like their own favorite thing that they like to play through, and their own experiences, also their own things that scare them. So we kind of wanted to have this like menu of like, okay, what are the themes that scare you the most that you would want to play on? You can choose that and have that kind of shape your game.
No, I'm a huge fan of that format of kind of just how do we flex this out right now. The Zone is doing it, Campfire did it. I think the horror genre is so ripe, and taking that core piece and then kind of flexing it out to say, here are some things that are going to help you customize this into exactly this kind of story you want to tell, is such a great way to help people know kind of what the story is going to be a little bit more like, kind of giving them some of those handles, which for a little bit more of a free form storytelling game, I think is always very helpful in the process. One of the things we actually want to make sure we have some time for also is to sit down and kind of walk through character creation, how the game starts, maybe even looking at a couple of prompts. And we kind of want to dive into that in just 1 second. But I think, before we do that, I want to just touch base. Matthias, you're here with us. You noped out on the kind of some of the initial concept of that right away. You were like, no, I don't want to be me. I'd love to hear, if you're comfortable with, I'd love to hear, what was it about that was intimidating for you or hard for you in that process?
There was a lot of prompts to my father in starting the beginning, and I have had a very rough childhood in that regard. So there was things that Doug were asking, like, what is one thing that you would have? And I was thinking, like, in terms of game, because I like to play for flavor in anything I do. So, like, I was thinking, oh, I have my father's Bible. And then the more we started setting more things up, the worse it got in my head, and it just started to just feed on itself. And then I was like, no, I'm going to get something to drink. And yeah.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, it's such a, like, whenever we're playing as ourselves, there are a couple games that'll pull on those. There's some of those elements that will start out very small and then cascade. Doug, how have y'all dealt with it? It looked like you wanted to kind of jump in there with a comment. How have y'all dealt with that as you've kind of grown the game and play? What are some of the ways you folded in some of those experiences?
Yeah, so the ways we moved away from that, do you mean, or the way?
Yeah, like some of the ways that you kind of learned from that and were able to transition the game out while still keeping some of those attachment pieces that make a horror game really hit home.
Yeah, I mean, I think inevitably when we play a game, there's going to be some crossover. Like, I don't know if it's exactly in-game bleed, but I guess. And, I think whatever, especially when we're talking about things that scare us, we're just going to naturally bring in stuff that scares. Even if I'm playing a character who's totally different from me, I'm going to bring in stuff that scares Doug, right? And so even when we moved away from that, Julian mentioned that we have now these archetypes instead. And those are the sort of people you would find like exploring a haunted house that's like very obviously trying to kill them, but they're still like going through, so like the skeptic who wants to prove that everything isn't real, or like the heir to the house, or the person who's positive that they are the rightful heir to the house. So that having those different archetypes, I think, helped people put enough distance between themselves and their character that they were able to then lean in as much as they want, right? When we were saying, please play yourself, it was, you had to lean all the way in. With this, you can go in as far as you want. And as the game builds up, like Matthias said, it can sort of, that ramp is definitely there. And Julian, I think, did the lion's share of the work on establishing that sort of ramp up and how to build that. So kick it over to them.
I mean, we do. So we have the night deck, which is what we call basically the game deck, the order in which you're going to draw the prompts, and the Haunting Tale deck that's mixed into that. And it's divided up into different times of night. So we start with dawn. I'm gonna mess this up if I try to recite it, just because I always do that. But we basically, you go through different. You know, you have dawn, you get the witching hour eventually, and then you're trying to make it. Or you do make it till morning, but you might not actually make it to morning. You don't get to pull those cards. You don't know if your character is gonna necessarily survive. And we were trying to hit the right kind of pacing for, like, if you really put your foot on the gas right from the beginning, it can get exhausting right away, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, another jump scare, great, like another like really terrifying thing. But if you amp up slowly and kind of start having players think about what's something that's like subtly wrong with this room or this house, something that just feels like it's not quite right, and have that kind of put that little brain worm in them and kind of let them discover what it means that this one thing was out of place, or this one thing was here that shouldn't have been there. What that actually means for the house and potentially their own personal storylines. So we tried to make sure that the prompts that you're getting increase in how extreme they are. But honestly, some of the earliest prompts are the ones that freak me out the most, because they are like that subtle, like something isn't right here, and kind of makes you question, those things that make you kind of question your perception of reality and what's really going on.
No, I love that. I mean, and also I imagine like some other games in this space, like a lot of those false things are seeding things that are going to come back later on. So even that questioning moment is also saying like, hey, we're saying this right now, we're naming this as a thing. And even if we find out, oh, it wasn't that, it's easy, it's small, like, the likelihood of that's going to come back in a stronger way later on as that play ramps up is strong. And I'm excited to kind of look at some of the narrative structure of that with y'all. I do want to talk a little bit more about the graphic design and the production part, but I want to just kind of come back to that after we've had a chance to kind of walk through a little bit of play, in part because that's what Brandon asked us to do. It was like, can we do this? And I'm super excited to dive in. So tell me a little bit about kind of how we would get started playing. I don't know if somebody has decks there that we're looking at. I don't know if Matt does. Brandon was like, go through this stuff, and he didn't send me anything to do it with. And that's not a slight, Brandon. I love you. But let's talk a little bit about kind of what you would go through to do that, or if we have some specific things we can look at as part of that process, whether that's physically or just talking through them. I would love that, but I was not given any of those materials.
Yeah, we can sort of set the game up and sort of establish a setting. So first, of course, in any horror game, we would establish safety tools we're going to use. We're going to have an X card printed in the game. And so we recommend using that. Lines and veils are also great. So is there anything should we do that now? Anything people want to?
We're big fans of safety tools on the channel, so yeah, if that's a significant feature of the game, and if people don't want to say them online, you can use the chat we have over on Facebook going to just type those in instead of saying them out loud. No one should have to out their triggers in public. We have lines against sexual violence and sexual coercion on channel. Other than that, I don't have a lot of strong lines or veils.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to share this because I've shared this publicly many times. But I like always having a veil on things like dementia and Alzheimer's and like memory stuff.
Yeah, any kind of slurs, but I don't imagine this is the kind of channel where those happen. So
it's good to put it out there.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to what's been said.
Cool. And you can always say X or type something in that chat if something comes up and we need to pause. So cool.
Yeah. And so then we would establish, we would choose our haunting tale. So we would decide what kind of house we want to be playing around in. So in the core box, we have a return to childhood, the echoes of childhood, a bite of nature, time distorted, the elements, and the witch's house. So, Tony, does one of those sound most exciting to you?
Bite of Nature or the time distorted ones both sound. Bite of Nature is a very good title for a set. Time Distorted also sounds really cool. Also may sound like it's a little bit more complex, but if we're just doing setup, neither one of those shouldn't matter too much. Is there one y'all are more excited to showcase than another?
Oh, and there's also an extraterrestrials one. Sorry, the Bite of Nature and the Elements one. I conflated the two. They're the same. Sorry.
Okay. Either one of those that people are more excited for than the other.
I personally really like Bite of Nature. It's my favorite of the.
Let's do Bite of Nature. That the name immediately jumped out at me. So yeah, I'm super hyped for that one.
Cool.
Sure. I haven't played that one. Let's do it.
So next thing we would do is we would establish where the house is in the world and the year that we're exploring it.
I can hit year, but I want somebody else to pick location. I mean, we got to go before cell phones, So I like, let's do like, we can do light cell phones, like early 90s is always good.
Okay.
If we have a cell phone, it's like this big.
It's this big. Yeah. You can Zach Morris it if you want to.
Yeah.
Anybody got a location they love?
Matthias, what do you like, bud?
I'm just thinking like the old house in an apple orchard.
Okay.
All right.
We got some of those around here. We could just say it's in like Maryland or Virginia.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So next thing we would choose from archetype cards. So everybody would pick an archetype that they like, and then there are some questions to answer about them. So the archetypes are the Ardent Believer, the Rattled Skeptic, we've been trying to pick the adjective for this one. I don't think we've settled on it yet. The Survivor, the Something Survivor, the Redemption Seeker, the Expectant Heir, the Manipulative Martyr, or the Perpetual Victim.
Those are all really good.
Thank you.
Has anybody had a chance to not play one of those that they're like, I keep on wanting to play this, but somebody else always picks it?
I honestly haven't played any of them with iterations at any time.
Matt disappeared.
Yeah, I do actually have cards on the floor here. I was trying to reach down and grab a set of cards here.
I'm down to play the Ardent Believer.
Okay. And we can just do a 3-person to have it flow a little quicker.
Yeah.
All right.
I've played the Redemption Seeker.
Okay.
Sounds pretty good.
I'll play the unadjective Survivor.
Adjectiveless Spider-Man.
The Redacted Survivor.
And Tony, you were again
Ardent Believer.
Ardent Believer, great. All right, so then there's a short description of your character. So Tony, you cannot explain the world around you, and you like that. It brings you comfort to know that you don't know it all, and you're keen to explore the supernatural world. It hurts when people mock you for your beliefs, but you'll show them. So first question, how long have you been a believer?
I think I've always been a believer in one way or the other. But it got really strong my junior year of high school, when I had a friend who went missing one day, and everybody else told me that they didn't remember them at all. But I 100% know that they were around. So something happened, and then everybody pretended like they just didn't exist.
Mm. Okay. Matt, the Tenacious Survivor? People in the chat, if there's one, we'll list them all. If there's one that you really like, just say like, yeah, that one. That'll help us. So, tenacious survivor, you have made it through a lot and you enjoy pushing your limits. It's always worked out for the best before, and you've got a few stories that shock people. They often ask how you're still alive. You wonder why they think you could be killed. So what was the first time you survived against surprising odds?
I was hit by a car going 95.
Mm.
And, I broke a few things, but I was up and walking in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then getting yelled at by my mother to stop running around with broken ribs.
Cool. And redemption seeker, you have done something that you are deeply ashamed of, and you want nothing more than to redeem yourself. Though you will never clean your hands of your past deeds, surely there must be a path to atonement, if only you can find it. When was the last time you had a full night's sleep?
Ooh. I think it was, I think I get them every once in a while, but it's only like when I've done a lot of like exhausting like physical work or something like that. So it's like, if I've had a busy day that like, it started early and went late, or there were a lot of like carrying stuff around to do or something like that. Like that's kind of the only time, unless it's more like, it's that thing where it's like exhaustion. It's like you're not really really restfully sleeping. You sleep, but not. It's like exhaustion, desperation, physical, more so than contented sleep.
Okay. Julian, do you want to take the?
Yeah. So to our ardent believer, how far would you go to make someone else be a believer too?
It's a great question. How far will I go? That's such a good question. I think I would risk my own life, and I would risk someone else's health, but I don't think I would. If they're dead, it's no good them believing, right? Like they've got to at least survive it.
I mean, if they turn into a ghost, then they'll believe something.
That's true. Also, good point.
2 believers for the price of 1.
And to our probably tenacious survivor, which of your stories of survival have you embellished?
I probably embellished on a couple of my stories of when I was a bouncer. It's easier to tell people that you were fighting off 6 guys and it was, 2 drunk idiots in a pickup truck. But, getting hit with a bottle is getting hit with a bottle.
To our redemption seeker, what is the wrong you committed that haunts your life still?
I think without getting too specific, I think it's like a lot of, I was just thinking about that. I think there's like an internalized disappointment that like, I didn't live up to all the expectations that were placed upon me as a younger person. And even though I know like that's illogical, it can't be escaped, right? It's like, or I haven't escaped it yet, right? It's like built in that like, I never did all the things that I was told I could do, So I think it's not like a crime sort of situation or something like that. It's sort of like a failure to achieve, sort of wrestling with it in that way.
Doug, do you want to take the next set?
Sure. All right. Ardent believer. How did you hurt the last person who mocked your beliefs?
Do ramp up.
Do what?
I said these do ramp up. Like this is just the beginning.
And quick, it's good. I think like I was really convinced that we could get the amperage on the electric charge right for the, for their eyes to really be opened to the supernatural world around us. And they'll be scars for a long time, but I'm told they'll mostly recover. And so,
Okay. Grizzled survivor? What was the one time that you barely survived, and why won't you tell anyone what you did to make it out of there?
Barely survived. I put myself in a stupid situation where I ended up having to jump out of a 3-story window and landed pretty much into a garbage can filled with broken glass. And basically had to tell the emergency room that, it was a, stupid tripping accident behind a bar.
Okay. Great. So then each character would establish a need, and so we have 2 options for each character.
We still have the redemption seeker
yeah.
intense question.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Redemption seeker. What makes you believe that you are at risk of committing a similar or worse wrong yet again?
I think it's the it's like I think it's like comfortableness. Like it's too easy to to do the things that I have been like I don't know that gap between like the achievement gap between like expectations and reality could be surmounted, but it would be a lot of work, and I don't want to do it. So like I'm gonna run, probably the likelihood that I'm gonna run into a situation where I don't want to do that much work is gonna be the odds are in favor of that occurring again.
Okay. Cool. Julian, do you want to do needs?
Sure. So for our ardent believer, you have, well, everyone's going to have 2 options. Only you have 2 options. Everybody else gets more for your needs. And they are either to find more evidence to share with other believers or to convince someone in the group to believe too. Someone specific.
Oh, I think to find more evidence to convince other believers is where I'm going to go.
Cool. For our enduring survivor, your options are to have an even more incredible survival story or to atone for what you've done to survive.
I think atone for what I've done to survive.
Cool. And for our redemption seeker, your options are to ask for forgiveness from someone you have harmed or to risk your own life to save someone else's.
I think that second one is going to set up the events of this well. So I'm going to go with the life risk.
Cool.
So now that we've established characters, everybody should introduce their characters by name.
My character is Tim Green.
Cool. Survivor.
I like Impossible Survivor.
Okay.
Um,
Impossible Survivor.
Jeff Sanchez.
Okay. And Redemption Seeker.
Yeah. I just supposed to mean it doesn't. I don't know. How about I don't know. Why is this the hardest one? I don't know.
That's why
I can look at my
technically-
bookshelf and pull some random names for you.
Sure. Give me some random names there.
Cool. Rick. I can't actually read it from here. Rick Bronte,
All right.
which I definitely didn't pull from Jane Eyre over there.
Definitely didn't. Sure.
All right. So now we establish relationships. So as a group, how does your group know each other, and why are you, as a group, committed to spending the night in this house?
That's a great question. Have we done this before? Is this a thing?
I don't know. Could be following you around for, one of your crazy expeditions.
Yeah, I'm
You survived one of your messes.
yeah, I'm 100% down to have hired these two to come with me to a site where I go. I think maybe I've done this a few different times, and not everything turns out well every single time. We don't need to go into the details why. But yeah, I'm happy to have hired these two folks to come out. One person who's willing, and one person who is probably not going to die.
Probably not going to die. Oh yeah, this is a paying gig. Then I imagine my character. I haven't really said that my character is lazy exactly, but I'm yeah, all right, $150 to spend the night in a house. Fine, whatever.
But you're not
Low
saying
effort.
your character's not lazy.
Right.
Cool. All right. And then individually, how does your need contribute to your willingness to explore the stranger, darker corners of the house on this night?
I think for me, it's why I'm here and why I've hired these folks. So it is the driving compulsion. I brought this group here to help me find evidence of something more.
Cool.
I've often survived off of the pain of others instead of the pain of others. Like other people have gotten hurt, so I could survive. And I'm here to make sure that these people don't get hurt so that they survive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that opportunity, it's sort of like if you put yourself in a situation where you have no other options but to do incredible things, then maybe you will achieve those things. So I'm kind of fronting for the whole lazy aspect and yeah, sure, whatever, this will be easy. But then it's I kind of hope something happens, because then I'll kind of have to rise to the challenge, I think.
Cool. All right. And then Julian, do you want to do secrets?
Yeah. So if we were in physical space, you would be establishing a secret with or about the person to your left. So I'm always really bad at doing this over digital means. So we're going to need to figure that out as a group who's to each other's left. But essentially, you're going to share the answer only with that person. It would be a secret to everybody else for the time being, at least. And it would just come up kind of organically during play. But you have 3 different questions basically to choose from. I guess I'll just go ahead and read all 3 of them out so you can all choose which sounds the most appealing to you. The first one is, this character knows a secret about you. What is the secret? The next one is, this character reminds you of someone you once knew. Why does that unsettle you? And the third one is, you are deeply worried for or about this character. Why do you fear for them?
Read them one more time for me.
All of them?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. This character knows a secret about you. What is the secret? This character reminds you of someone you once knew. Why does that unsettle you? Or you are deeply worried for or about this character. Why do you fear them or for them?
Cool. Love it. With just 3 of us, we can easily kind of just route through it. Also, too. Does somebody? I would love to take the secret. This character knows a secret about me. Do either of you particularly want to know a secret about me? I'll pick that person.
Sure.
Sure. All right. Matthias, I'll shoot you a message over on Facebook real quick with what that secret is. And then, Matthias can do Matt, and then Matt can do me.
Let me just get Facebook open. All right. Matt. I think I'll go with I'm worried about this person. I think that was the third prompt, right? Send Matt a message.
We're all sending messages here.
It's the best type of live
It's
live
the best
videos
live
when everybody's
right now.
typing.
We're all
Here, let me do this. If more
messages.
people were playing, is there a max number of players, and what is the max number of players for the game, and how does secrets work with more or less people?
Yeah, so it's a max of 5. And so in a physical space, you would be able to just sort of turn to the person and whisper it to them. And then while others are, 2 people could be sharing a secret at once, and that would speed things along a little bit. But with 3 players, you sort of need to wait for everybody else.
And then are the questions tagged to the archetypes, or are they tagged? Is it just a list that you work your way down? Like there's 5 secrets that you work, or is there more than that?
There's 3 prompts, and you can just choose any one. Like all of you could have a character who knows a secret about.
Gotcha.
So many secrets.
Secrets. Sorry, audience. You don't get to know them yet.
You don't get to know.
We're not going to play the full game, so you'll maybe never know your secret.
It's true.
We'll have a tier on the Kickstarter which you can learn the secret.
Yeah.
Yep.
See,
We're going to screenshot all these secret messages and only send them to you if you're at that level.
All right. And so then just a couple questions to set up the house. What season is it, and what is the weather like? That's for everybody.
We got to keep it in the spooky season. It's got to be fall, that crisp, crisp
I was
apple
thinking the
cider
same
getting
thing.
ready. If there's an apple orchard nearby.
Cool. In what era was the house built, and is it like the other houses in the area?
1800s. And I kind of assumed it was remote based on that. So I don't know that there
Sure.
are a lot of other houses in the area.
Yeah, like the nearest house is like
Sure.
2 miles away.
Cool. Well, if you're going that far, by what means do you travel to the house?
I think we got to be in. I've already forgotten his character's name, but I think we got to be in Tony's car.
Tim is my name. Yeah, it is not in good shape. It is not in good condition. Like we hear it kind of get that nice little sputter as we, you know, come down the long dusty road through the orchard and turn off the car. It sputters a little bit. That's normal.
Like it may not start.
Like it might not start if we
Again.
get it to all of a sudden. Yeah.
Right.
Not that that'll be an issue.
Cool. And then on your way there, for each of you, what catches your attention on the journey to the house?
Hmm.
There's not a lot of sound for a place with so many trees.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could distinctly hear each individual apple falling from a very decent distance.
Yeah. I think we see like a I live in PA and go back and forth between Philadelphia and Harrisburg on a regular basis. So I love the idea of like we see like an old Amish cart and I make eye contact with the driver as I like kind of slowly pull around him and we you know pass on the way in.
I think there's a usual topography outside the house. Like we're going down a lane or something like that, and there's just like a lot of little mounds around, oblong little mounds along the drive to this house.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So now we would have the night deck set up in the middle of the table. And we would start, as we start playing the game, you would start drawing a card off the top, reading it to yourself. I'll read them out loud for the benefit of people at home, and then answering the prompt. So you don't read the prompt out loud. People don't get to know what the prompt was. And in many of the phases of night, you would have choices there. You don't get to say like, I'm sorry, I had to do, it was either this. You just have to choose one and run with it. So you pull up to the outside of the house, and that's when the cards begin. So we'll start with the ardent believer. The natural world has crept its way into the house. What is the most obvious sign on its exterior that the elements are trying to claim it?
Well, there's literally the bough of a tree sticking out one of the second story windows.
Cool. All right, survivor. In what way do animals seem to behave differently around the house?
I don't really hear many of them. Like you would expect to hear like birds or see like a squirrel, but you don't really see them that much. And the ones you do see are almost emaciated looking. Like there's this whole orchard full of food, and they're just don't look like they're eating any of it.
Mm. Cool.
Nice ad. That's creepy.
All right. And then Redemption Seeker. What insect do you see as you approach the house, and what makes you think that it's watching you?
I think if we're going to be in sort of a southern clime, I think that you get those they're like little. I've experienced them anyway. They're like almost like little tornadoes of insects that are just kind of all swarming around in like sort of a little cloud that gathers. You know, they're hovering over something, or they're doing air currents or whatever. I don't know what forms them in real life, but there's definitely, you see those knots of those little tiny gnats, but they are they're so then to make it like, why is it watching us? Like it's almost like parting, that like the clouds are kind of covering the house almost like a veil, and then they just kind of part, like let us go up the steps. Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then this is a card that everyone would answer. What is a rumor each of you has heard about the area around the house? What common thread connects them all?
So do we each do a rumor and then we kind of figure out what common thread, or do we work it out together as a group?
You can either way, but usually everybody shares a rumor and then you kind of figure it out together.
Awesome.
It's real low effort, but that's kind of the character I'm going with here. But it's I heard someone died in this house, which is I've recently heard. It's like every house built before like 1950, like somebody died in that house, because that's just the fact of like existence. But like, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to throw that out there as like, I think somebody died in I heard somebody died in this house.
I heard it was a working orchard until 2 years ago when the owners went missing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What's this name? They only found parts around the house. I heard that the person didn't die in the house, but they didn't totally find the person whole.
Cool.
Right. I think those seem to relate together pretty naturally.
Yeah.
Or unnaturally.
All right. And now at this point, the next card you would draw would be the transition, where you're entering the house. So to all of you, as you walk into the foyer of the house, you find it fully furnished. Is it as though people just left today, or has it clearly been vacant for years?
About 2 years sounds about right for what we've established already.
Yeah, I mean, I like when you walk into the foyer. It just, it seems very much like there's a light layer of dust. Nothing. It's not horribly decrepit, but it doesn't look like anyone has been here recently.
Some very dry flowers in a vase on the little end tables. Like there's a little silver tray with has keys and coins in it still. Like that's where they kept them, and they walked away, and they're still there. Nothing's been disturbed.
Cool.
I'm just remembering the outside of the house, and I'm just looking around to figure out where the tree would have gone through, and they can't find it.
Ooh, that's real good.
Nice. And this is also the part of the game where you would start to draw the house on the map, right? So you'd have the space, the erasable board in the middle, and then you would start to sketch, just sort of an overhead view, nothing fancy, just sort of boxes or circles or whatever shape the room takes.
Yeah.
All right, so now we move on to start exploring the house. So let me give this a roll to randomize here. 6.
That means you're all dead.
Yep, sorry.
Oh.
Game over.
Dang.
Well, let's get on to talking about production now.
Yeah.
Those OSR story games where you got high lethality right away.
Yeah. All right. And so just based on the way cards were drawn, Redemption Seeker, this one would be coming to you. You establish a new room, finding a kitchen. What do you find that you know will help you, draw need, or what truth are you forced to confront, draw need? So in the game, there are things that cards may tell you to draw, either needs or wounds. So needs are going to be things that help you start working towards that need that you established when you created your character. The first two you draw are going to help you build towards it. The third time you draw need, if you do, it's going to fulfill your need for you. But if you keep drawing needs after that, it's going to start to exceed it, and the house is going to start to turn that resolved need back against you or back against the other people in the house. And then wounds, will cross that bridge when we come to it.
So I'm sorry, what were the choices? It was something you need or something you...
It was, so you find a kitchen. That's fact. What do you find that will help you?
Help you.
Or what truth are you forced to confront?
Truth. Oh. I mean, I'm going to draw need either way, so I guess I'll do that. But like, I think the truth, it seems like a little early to get in here. I think that it's going to be a just playing off the last thing Matt said there. Like, I think there's tree roots that are in the kitchen. I noticed that there are tree roots that are coming out of the sink. Like, or roots, or something has grown up out of the sink, and like, it is not like a tree, it's like these brownish lines that are like too fleshy and disturbing to be just regular vines of some sort, but they kind of come out of the sink and they go like up the walls or whatever, that there's like, that's, and maybe they've got leaves on them, but it is the truth that I must confront is that there is weirdness happening here in this house. Like, this is a very unusual situation. I think is what I'm going to go for with that prompt.
Cool. And based on the need card, you find a phrase written on the house itself connected to your need. So if you were playing, as you drew the card that said draw need, you draw the other one, look at the two together, and then sort of.
Yeah. So I think in that case, there's some sort of like, I guess some sort of warning written like on the, this kitchen has like sort of yellow paint, and it's sort of, that's the most recent phase of it, but it's there's some sort of like, not exactly like a pencil mark, I guess pencil, but like more charcoal, sort of like, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not like people leave charcoal around that often, but so it's maybe some sort of thick construction type pencil or whatever, but it's got some sort of message. Being on camera, it's like a pressure. I don't know, it's some sort of warning that is maybe it says don't go upstairs. Maybe it says that just straight up that says don't go upstairs, like in pencil on the wall, written in the yellow on the wall next to the sink.
Great. And so as you're narrating your scene, if other people are with you, they can you can draw them in, you can bring them in, they can offer things to include as well. And then as soon as you feel like your part, yeah.
That's what Tim thinks about this?
Yeah, I'm like, Tim, did you write this?
No. I as I'm poking a tree, a fleshy tree root. Maybe it's been a couple years. Maybe like, somebody came through and marked, just not like, just a warning, but there's also these roots and that limb coming out upstairs. So I think it means something.
Yeah. Nothing good.
I'm gonna follow. a leaf off the tree and just watch a little bit of what looks like blood just trickle down and be like, oh, that's not right.
I'm gonna reach out and just taste it real quick. And it, I think, it tastes kind of bitter, but it does just kind of taste like sap. Nothing particular at this point, but I did just ingest some weird fleshy tree sap in my body.
Delicious.
It's a little bitter. Not quite as sweet as I thought it would be.
And now the Tom Bombadil mushroom sequence starts.
And then Matt, when you feel like your scene is good to go, you'll the phrase we've suggested is I'll pass the scene now.
Oh, okay. Yes, I will pass on to someone else. Yes.
Not to rush you, but just
No. I
follow along at home.
think we've all interacted with what I established. Time
Cool.
for someone else to do something.
All right. Ardent Believer, your question is getting re-rolled. You establish a new room. In that room, there is a radio or stereo repeating a song. Your choices are, why is this specific song meaningful to you? Or what part of the song is distorted?
Oh, I think we actually hear just, past, a little bit past the kitchen, all of a sudden, I think we hear the radio just kind of click on in the next room. And it sounds like it's scrambling initially. You hear some kind of, some very old, generic, you can't quite place it, music from, the early 1900s and before it shifts into, the song that my friend Jenny and I used to listen to in the parking lot while we waited for it to empty out after school before they disappeared. And it was a song, it was kind of like our end of day ritual. And I don't know 90s music well enough to just whip out the best answer song. But yeah, it's a song we would just kind of just listen to after school to kind of decompress, chat, and catch up about the day before they disappeared.
Well, I have good news for you. Out of character. Well, I'm not a character, but about my knowledge of 90s music, what kind of feel are you going for? I got you.
Let's say kind of for the scene, it's very contrary because it's a very kind of whimsical, light, goofy song.
It is Blues Traveler's Hook.
Love it.
Okay.
And so that clicks on and I kind of immediately hook into the next room and look around at this, I fairly dated boombox also. It looks like it's from kind of that same time period where we weren't quite sure where music technology was going yet. So it kind of lit up on the the far end of the room, and so I kind of cross over and start messing with it. And even as I fiddle with the knobs, and it won't stop, and I'm banging it, and it'll distort and restart, but it doesn't. It won't stop.
Cool.
That would.
If anybody wants to do anything, though.
I don't know if you had to get a second card or not.
Nope. Yeah, that one didn't have another attached to it.
Is the power on in here?
I don't think I've seen the power on in this entire place. I hear a different song.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I hear Dancing Queen. We used to play at the clubs when it was time to go. Usually like at 4 o'clock in the morning. Even if you're drunk, Dancing Queen. It's time to go home. And I keep looking back to the front door, and it's closed, and I don't remember any of us closing it.
All right, well, I'll pick up on this then. I think what I hear is some sort of like Sousa march from like a middle school band or something like that. Like we had to close, like it was the concerts. You always would end the concert at the end of the year with some, I don't know, Sousa marches, better than the one that everyone knows. But yeah, it's some sort of like a similar thing. It was like, now it's over, but it's a very different. Yeah, I'm sure we could, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, is the power on? Like, I think I don't know. I would toggle the light switch here in the room and see, because it's proper night. So I don't know if we came in with our flashlights or not. Like, that seems like that's a ghost hunter sort of thing that we would have been doing. We would have been here with our flashlights and the lights would have been off. So I think you asked is the power on, and like I'm gonna like toggle the light switch and like nope, not active. Power's not active to the house.
I like as soon as you say no, it's not active after toggling it a bunch of times, like the lights switch on and the radio turns off, and I'll pass the scene there.
Yeah, all right, it's good.
All right.
What room was this?
This was like a living room off the side of the kitchen.
All right, Survivor. You establish a new room. Something in here suggests that you and your friends may not be alone in the house. Either what repeating noise gives you that sense, or what seems to have been left behind in a hurry.
Hmm. New room, first floor. I'm thinking like a old style study, with some books on the wall, but not anything really enticing to look at. And in the center is one of those old style claw-footed desks. But on the desk is just a McDonald's meal. And it looks like just a bite taken out of it, and it looks pristine. I personally have heard that burgers from McDonald's can last 25 years, but this does not look like a 25-year-old burger.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right.
Don't see what.
And what room was it again?
It's like a study.
Okay.
Like, crumbling bookshelves, and the rug looks well worn. I'm sure if you lift up the rug, you'll have like pristine hardwood floors. And the moment you go away from the rug, it's like dirty, nasty hardwood floor.
I think I go over and put my hand near the burger to see if it feels warm or not. And it's ice cold, but it is colder than the surrounding area. Like I put my hand on the burger, and like chills run up my spine. And I actually look at the drink next to it, and there's still ice in it.
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Tim, you don't want to taste this?
One more time.
Tim, you don't want to taste this?
No, not gonna eat. Not gonna eat anything. I don't like it.
All right. So then normally everybody would draw another dusk card, but in order to keep things moving and give everybody the feel,
Yeah.
there would then be a transition card where if there were 4 or 5 players, you would split up into pairs or groups. And then I think with 3 players, it's up to you if you want to stay together as a trio or have one person go their own way.
I love somebody getting separated. That's fun.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be Tim. Tim's gonna get separated.
I love it. Yeah, I'll get separated.
Okay. So you're not allowed then to reconnect with the group until cards say that you can.
Okay.
So perhaps in the narration of this one, we can establish why that is. So Tim, your midnight card is, you discover a room that has been flooded with murky water. Somehow, against all reason, the water seems to grow deeper further into the room. What frightens you so much that you hide in the water?
I think like I go down to check the basement real quick because we've got weird power stuff going on, so I'm just gonna go check the breakers real quick. And I get down there and it it seems like about a foot of water to start, and then as I get further and further out into the basement, like looking for the breaker switch, it says exactly what you want to be doing when there's water on the floor. Like it starts to seem like it's going up higher, and at first I just assume it's an uneven uneven ground. But then when I look back around, like I can't see the stairs anymore because it's so dark down here. And I think what I see is like I can see like these just a little bit of a light through a window up ahead. And I see a pair of feet like stop right in front of that window and just pause and like then the feet turn towards the window, and so I just plunge underneath the water.
Okay. Cool. All right. Next up, Redemption Seeker. Yours is question 6. You discover a room littered with dead insects. So you would establish a room and it's littered with dead insects. They seem to be gathered around and inside of an old animal carcass. What is the animal and why, and what is so strange about its placement in the room?
I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be something pretty big to be noticeable. And I'm gonna go like, yeah, I think a goat. I think it's a goat.
Okay.
Well, it's hard to tell what it is. Maybe it's a sheep, but it's some barn animal type animal that's pretty good size, and it's like been stretched out. And I think so. If I've established a room first, I think this is like, I think there's like at the back of the house, kind of like we're not actually drawing a map here, but like as I'm envisioning it, like the kitchen area and all the rooms that we've explored are sort of in the middle tier of the house now, and so like this is all the way in the back, and maybe there's a stairway that maybe that's where Tim went down, but then there's this landing area and there's definitely stairs that go up, and so there's this it's almost like a fancy spirally staircase, so there's a room for there to be like a landing or like ornate sort of area below the stairs, where this thing is, this creature's been splayed out, and it's been splayed out. Like, that's the unusual placement. It's been like staked to form like compass points with each of the legs and stuff like that, and it is open, almost like a tanning hide like you would have, except there's obviously all the bones and stuff are there too. And it's probably, I'm thinking that it's like dried, but I think it's not like fresh, right? But it's like been through a couple cycles of these insects feeding and stuff like that. But the other thing that I think I'm gonna say that's pretty unusual is that there's like more of these branches that we saw before, and they're like going up the staircase, like straight up out of this carcass, going up the spiral staircase, like up through the middle of it, maybe reaching out and grabbing some of the banisters as it goes up.
And
so.
One thing I forgot with Tim, for the midnight cards, you always draw a need and draw a wound. I forgot because we didn't write it in the spreadsheet because we just knew. Oh,
because that's what you do when you're in the midnight card.
That's on Matthias. He's got to put that in all of them, even if we don't tell him to. So Seeker, will just do yours. For your wound, either something in the house breaks or an old wound interacts painfully with the house. But on the plus side, you find an object that inspires you to work toward your need.
Right. Which I chose like a self-destructive need. So that's or a self, danger to myself need. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely like some sort of, I think like right as I'm there with the vines that I've described, like maybe I pull on one of the vines just a bit to kind of test the strength of it, and that's like some of those banister pieces collapse down under the weight of the added weight of me pulling on it with the vines and stuff like that. Some of the pieces of the railing and stuff are collapsing and down into the this sort of landing area where I'm standing. And so then we've got like kind of ropey hanging vines clutching pieces of banister that are now like kind of swaying back and forth inside this house. And there's like, a collapsing bit of dust and stuff like that. And then I draw the need card. And I guess because that's a wound. So it's like I got injured by that, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
And then the need for that would be something I don't know, some maybe there's maybe one of these pieces of iron or a piece of the banister. I was imagining it as wood, but maybe, well, I know it can stay wood, but like one of those not doweled, but the banister pieces that are like lathed. It's kind of swinging, and the vine is wrapped around it, and almost looks like someone swinging a baton type thing. So I'm like, the vine can have a weapon, and so then I kind of pull it out of that. So then now I've got this beat pole of sorts. I've armed myself, and so I'm feeling more confident and ready to take on all threats.
Cool. Excellent. It was a lot of good flavor there, but I also know we've been on for about an hour and a half. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I loved it. I had a really great time just getting a little bit of a sense of how some of the different pieces flow through, some of the different elements that get introduced as you go from phase of the night to phase of the night. As things progress, are there any little bits that y'all are like, oh, this is something really great that happens a little bit later that gets added in? Like, we knew that we were going to start taking some additional penalties and draws for those second pieces? Is there a part in one of the later phases that y'all are really excited about that you haven't got a chance to feature yet?
Julian, do you?
I mean, the main thing that I'm excited for people to play through is that, well, wounds obviously have the tendency to get worse, and you get and wounds are not necessarily just physical things; it could be like psychological wounds. It's kind of up to the player to decide what the nature of the wound is, and how it gets worse. But also needs, fulfilling them is great. You can also kind of overfulfill them, in which case the need turns against you, and too much of a good thing can become toxic. So it's really fun to see players kind of take this thing that's supposed to be a good thing, and then if it gets a little bit like over saturated, that need, seeing how that kind of turns poisonous.
And I really like how one of the things that I learned from Julian in designing this, since they're just like, I mean, you're here, I won't talk about you. You're so good at horror. Like, I learned so much from working on this with you. But the way watching players have control over what they're responding to, but feeling like they're gradually like having control taken away from them as they go, is I really, really like watching players experience that, and experiencing it myself the times I've played. So.
Yeah. No, I would love to hear maybe from Matthias a little bit from you about like what, as you're, as you've come in, there's a significant art team on this, right? So we've got Kevin also, and Sarah as well, but you're doing the graphic design specifically. What are some of the things that you've really been focusing on as you're kind of looking at how you kind of bring the graphic design to bear within the overall design of the game that either were really challenging or you're just really excited for people to see?
I've been a graphic designer on Home since before Wedding Games. I came up with, I think we were just coming off of Kids on Bikes when Doug brought this up. And we came up with the logo, and I came up with the tagline. But once we got started actually making the game itself, we talked more about how the players are basically divining their own path throughout this house, and how the house is feeding off of them. So we originally were coming up with the idea of having tarot-sized cards, because a lot of these prompts are somewhat beefy and they have to take up space, and you can't do that on a regular 2-inch by 3.5-inch playing card. So we made them to tarot cards, and then Doug hears it all the time when I'm working with him. It's like, I'll get bored, and all of a sudden the game will change dramatically on how the design looks. So one day I was home and I was bored, and I came up with this black look to the cards with tarot and lines, and we just had the cover artist. We just chose who that was going to be, so we took a piece of her artwork and I made a mock box front, and I started adding the lines from the tarot cards to the box, and all of a sudden we had more of a complete feel. I don't remember who came up with the idea of the keys. I think that was Doug.
I thought that was you.
This is so long ago.
Sorry.
No. Well, I think one of the challenges when you're giving people over like, hey, this is your storytelling game, like art can oftentimes influence the direction a narrative takes, right? And so that perfect mix of, we want to establish vibes and context with, we don't want any of these cards to tell you how you're going to respond to it, is always such a delicate place to try to mix. And so some of those repeated elements, the line work, the different key pieces are all really great ways to create suggestivity without saying like, hey, here's where you're headed. It's a really, really great visual aesthetic it's very cool to see all the different pieces come together. A lot of times, like I said, in horror stuff, you'll get very different kind of scales for how people will lean into those liminal or abstracted spaces versus the specifics. So it's always kind of interesting to see how people have kind of leaned into that.
Yeah, I've also gotten great notes from Matt, and I've gotten great notes from Brandon on how to to do certain things. And it's a very doing any graphic design or any art for any project is a very collaborative effort, and you got to listen to everyone, take everyone's input, and try to reach a good a good level of their vision for their product.
I love it. And speaking again of that total project vision, like Matt, for you, what's and I think this is a question for a lot of people, like Doug and Julian, y'all have worked with a lot of different studios, right? So you've got to figure out, sometimes it's just like, hey, we're going to put it out to a lot of people, see who it strikes interest for. Other times it's like, hey, we know this is going to be a good project for this partner or this design team. Matt, for you as one of the producers of the game, what were some of the things that attracted you to the project specifically, besides amazing design and great people? Like, what are some of the things that made this feel like a good fit for Wet Ink?
I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like we know Doug, and I know some of Julian's other designs, though we didn't work with them on them. But so like, when you've got designers who are established, who are coming to you and saying like, hey, you're in the running, we would like to talk to you about producing the game, because like, I feel like they could have gone to anyone, to produce this game, but they want us to do it. And I think when we were having our conversations last year, we were off of, we had just released a co-production with Game and Curry for Jiangxi Blood in the Banquet Hall. And that was a very, very large box. Matthias was involved in that too. So it was a big project, and it took a lot of energy, especially for Brandon, who is the business director at Wet Ink Games, and shepherding that to the point of publishing. So this game it's still in that direction. It's a box set RPG, comes with tokens, comes with cards. There's a lot of stuff to produce and to manage, but it was a little bit smaller than the previous project that we had done like this. So it's sort of like it was a perfect fit for what we wanted to do. It was less of a stretch to do another big project to take on another larger scale project. But Wet Ink Games still wants to move forward with these kind of games, because we've always done cards and dice with our books for role-playing games, but like these sets where you get the box, you get the cards inside, you get what you need to play, you've got the remarkable play sheets so that you can draw with the map and stuff. Like, this is stuff that we've done before, but like the first time you do it, you have to learn how to do it. Until this time, we know we've done everything that we're doing this time. We're not learning anything new this time as far as like from a production side, but it is sort of like it was the first time a fluke, right? So this will be the real test about whether we really know what we're doing as far from a production side, because like it's all the same elements, but it's a little bit smaller scale as far as a volume of stuff to produce. It's many of the similar elements anyway. And so it was a perfect fit for us from that side, as like, it's people we want to work with. The design is great. The themes are great because we've done so many horror games as Wet Ink already. Mentioning Shang-Chi and Never Going Home, like those are both horror games. So it's sort of in our wheelhouse for marketing reasons. It's like it's in our wheelhouse for like production knowledge. It's in our wheelhouse of like people we want to work with. It really just fired on all cylinders as far as Wet Ink Games is concerned.
Awesome. No, that's always good to hear. Doug and Julian, I want to ask y'all before we go also the same question, but like, how do y'all, as you're looking at approaching publishers, make that decision? Before I ask you that though, Trashorama in the chat said they're pretty excited for this one. The art's catchy, and the box ensures stores will always have it, a way to display it on shelves. Yeah, boxes make it way easier to sneak RPGs in. I always love the card format because it's people who would never play an RPG. If you just start putting cards on the table, they're way more inclined to just pick up and start doing storytelling. But they want to know if the box size has been established, because they want to know how if the map's going to be kind of a flat piece, a fold piece, what's box size, and if we know, and how is the reusable map, which I love, going to be packaged.
We have discussed that. I don't remember it's like 10 by 7, right? That's the Matthias, you're here. Like that's because the rule book has to be slightly smaller. So like we do know the number. I don't remember off the top of my head what the number is,
That's fine.
but Matt may know it or be able to find it. It's the same size box as AEG uses for the game 10. If you know that game, it's I can put my hands out. It's about this big. That doesn't help anyone.
That's fine.
Like whatever.
Trash is exciting because they stumped you with their question. So you're
it is
getting away.
For people following along
It
at home, Matt has normal sized hands.
Yeah.
Just
So
it is a standard box size that is, again, like from a production standpoint, we're not like asking for an unusual box size. From a store standpoint, it's like going to be a size that games already come in. And I forget, like I said, I forget exactly what the dimensions are, but it has been established. And then the map, because they also asked about that, will be folded, like 2 folds to make it 4 times. When you unfold, it'll be 4 times as big as the box. So
Cool.
then you should have plenty of space to draw your map and,
real quick, because I want to be conscious of everybody's time. Doug Julian, like I said, how did y'all decide who you wanted to approach with the project?
We definitely talked about different options, and Wedding came up like very, very early on, and we were like, this would be a good match. I'm a huge fan of like Jiangxi Blood in the Banquet Hall. I'm friends with Banana Chan and Senfeng Lim, and it just looks gorgeous, and everything about that project really was exciting for me. So we were. You had just kind of come off of that. I feel like when the timeline of the last few years makes no sense to me. I don't remember anything anymore, but it feels like you're just coming off of that when we approached.
It was released. The physical came out summer last year, and then the first conversations we had were in winter, early winter. So yeah, it was right off. Yeah, you are correct. That's all I was saying.
Good.
I got the box set. It's 7 by 9 by 2.
7 by 9 by 2. There we go, Trash.
There you go.
Someone
7
got it. So,
I said 7 by 10, but it was 7 by 9. So there you go.
that's awesome to hear, because like I said, a lot of people who watch this, we have a huge design community that surrounds the channel, and a lot of people are always like, how do we talk to publishers? What does that look like? What do we do? We don't have enough time to cover all those things. We have had conversations about that kind of stuff in the past. And so I had a great time playing. It was great to sit down with all of you. I love the flow of things. We actually, in one of our friend Discords, they just did for read the fucking manual, just did an episode on the Quiet Year. And the thing that came out was a lot of people are like, they love the game. They like the game. The thing that bothers them is the silence that you sit in, want everybody else's turn, and the desire to do all the normal game things and interact with each other. But they like the phase play. They like the map drawing. What y'all have done here by creating that autonomy of actually having characters you inhabit puts a different scale to it, while bringing in a lot of the things that make that game great and that process great, while giving it some really specific elements. I love the concept of the different theme for the night decks. The specific stop point where you do the transitions is a really sharp way to actually create the story structure consistently every single time, while letting that flexibility of what happens in between those points really kind of ratchet things around. And the complexity of how needs build along with wounds and other elements that you're trying to manage as you go give a really tactical feel that actually, like, Wedding for me always lived in this place of like the story elements are really good, but there's a sense of tactility, like tactical decision making that comes up in a lot of their games that is balancing out, do I want to do this, or do I want to do this, or how do I manage this as it ramps up. So it's a really good fit in with the rest of their line, but also just really clever design in the way that y'all have implemented that. Hopefully we'll be able to have at least a couple of y'all back on to come play once the full project is done and out with some of our team. We can get an actual drawing space up on the screen too, and play as well. So, but I want to be, like I said, conscious of everybody's time. If you've been watching, or if you're watching later, head over to TTRPG.link/HomeRPG to go check out these details and more. If you joined us late, like Trash and a couple other people did, you can go back, get a little bit of a sense of the play, and learn more about all of these wonderful people. But this has been Prestige Class with the design team from Home, which is coming out from Wedding Games. And until next time, Class is dismissed.